my thing, but today it's not. But we're going to work through this. So good afternoon. Welcome to the Yountville Chamber of Commerce November 2020 Election Forum. I'm Richard Hall, the chair of the Yountville Chamber Board of Directors, and I'll be your host and moderator. So I'm unmuted again. We're going to get through this forum eventually. Hopefully you're still with us. This forum is going to consist of questions and answer sessions for the candidates running for the Yountville Town Council, as well as a question and answer session with the proponents and opponents of the cannabis ballot Measure T. If you're logged into YouTube or your Facebook account and watching live from these platforms, you'll have an opportunity later in the forum to submit questions for our candidates and then Measure T representatives. I will announce when it is time to submit your questions. Please note, not all questions that are submitted will be asked. We'll do our best to select questions that have not already been asked and or are not biased and allow for fact-based responses. If your question does not get asked this afternoon, we encourage you to contact the town council candidates or opponents or proponents of Measure T directly. Before we jump in, I would be remiss if I did not take this opportunity to tell you a little bit about the Yountville Chamber of Commerce. The Yountville Chamber is a 501c6 nonprofit organization governed by a volunteer board of directors and run by a professional staff. Our mission is enriching the vibrancy of our community. We serve over 300 businesses and resident members located in Yountville, Napa Valley, and beyond. The Yountville Chamber lives at the intersection of helping businesses succeed and our community thrive. You can learn more about the Yountville Chamber of Commerce at our website, yountvillechamber.com. Let's begin with the town council candidates portion of our forum. I'll begin by reading a short bio submitted by each of the candidates. Following this, each candidate will have 2 minutes for their opening statement. So we're only 3 minutes behind. We're going to be fine. We'll make that up. This November, 4 candidates are running for town council. They are incumbent Jeff Durham, Eric Knight, incumbent Marjorie Moeller, and Scott Owens. Jeff Durham. Jeff was born and raised in Napa and returned 17 years ago to make his permanent home in Yountville. His current 6 years on the council has given him an understanding of public policy, as well as the importance of personal interaction. 6 years of service has given him a better comprehension of how to ask the right questions regarding issues for our collective community. And through continued outreach, he knows we can evolve as a community. As Yountville evolves and there is change, he can help to ensure that we have a plan and guidance for the success of the entirety of the community. As an avid CrossFit athlete and runner, Jeff states he has the best stamina to endure 5 hours of council meetings, which I can attest to being in those meetings for 5 hours. Thanks, Jeff. Eric Knight is 59 years old and was born and raised in Napa and Yountville and currently works at the Napa Home Depot. He grew up working in his family-owned Yountville hardware store and lumber yard. Eric studied political science and community planning at UC Davis and Sonoma State. He moved to Yountville with his wife Peggy in 1989. Eric served on the Yountville Town Council from 1997 to 2005 and is a 25-year Yountville Kiwanis member and Yountville Focus volunteer. Welcome, Eric. Marjorie Moeller is honored to have served the town of Yountville over the past years on the Yountville Town Council. She would like to thank the veterans for their service and for providing Yountville the opportunity to incorporate as a town in 1965. And I'm wearing my 50-year pin, which I only wish I could show here, Margie. I wore that because I was there at that auspicious date. Marjorie sends happy 55th birthday wishes to everyone in the town of Yountville. Scott Owens. A native of New Orleans, has spent the last 30 years in Northern California and moved to Yountville in 2014. He has developed his leadership skills in the private sector, working in hospitality and agricultural commodities, as well as in the nonprofit sector in youth education, supportive housing, and health advocacy. Since moving to the Napa Valley, Scott has been immersed in local leadership through Leadership Napa Valley and membership on the Napa Valley Transportation Authority Citizen Advisory Committee and the Napa County Library Commission. He holds a degree with honors from the USF School of Management. Welcome, Scott. Now, each candidate will have 2 minutes to make their opening statement. Then we'll move into the question and answer portion, going in alphabetical order. We're going to begin with Jeff Durham. My one final housekeeping item is that since we want to make sure we remain on time, I will be using the traditional soccer method of yellow card and red card to alert the candidates to the amount of time. A yellow card will indicate 15 seconds remaining, and a red card will indicate 5. Jeff, your floor.
Thank you, Richard. And I'm afraid you're dealing with a bunch of politicians, so I am not positive that we will gain those 3 minutes back. So I want to tell you, thank you to the Yountville Chamber, Whitney and Richard, for giving us an outlet to reach the community of Yountville. This is my opportunity to further discuss my voting record, ideas, and give you details on how we can all move forward over the next 4 years. There's no doubt that Yountville has progressed over these years, and I'm very proud to call Yountville home. It's wonderful to be on my porch and interact with neighbors, both new and established. My roots run deep. My grandparents both retired from the Veterans Home after many years of service. My father was a local fireman and builder of over 70 homes in Napa, and he spent his retirement as a maintenance contractor at several HOAs here in Yountville. My mother worked at Kaiser Steel and now spends a retirement as a tour guide in the Valley. My first job, 15 years old, was at Mama Nina's here in Yountville, the current site of RH, as well as attending Napa Valley College. Retail support and diversity, continued safety and fiscal responsibility, and of course, parking will continue to be my focus. My work during 6 budget cycles has ensured proper reserves and spending while keeping focused on revenue sources. As your council member, I will continue my outreach to all members of our community to ensure all voices are heard and taken into account. We're a small town, and we need to talk to all members to determine how a matter will affect the community. I can say unequivocally that your voice is being heard. I hear all voices to make a council decision, and I cannot care for residents and neighborhoods without caring for our businesses as well. The council needs to vote for the community, and I will continue to vote for the collective voice of the community. Thank you.
Okay, I think the unmute worked. Thank you, Jeff. That was wonderful. Next, we'll have Eric Knight.
And I'm very grateful for you taking the time to watch this candidate forum. I also want to thank the first responders who are protecting us today. You may be asking, why is Eric Knight running for town council again? Well, my commitment in Yountville began 50 years ago with my family's local hardware store and regular visits to the Veterans Home. More recently, Peg and I raised a family here, and I served you on the town council from 1997 to 2005. During my past council service, we reduced the threat of flooding in Rancho de Napa and Buena Vista by securing federal, state, and local funds to build the flood wall and divert Hopper Creek. We invested in our water and waste treatment plants, funded a local shuttle, dedicated funding for our community center, and expanded our Parks and Rec programs. I decided to run again for town council because now more than ever, we must make new connections and move forward together as we await a return to a new normal. Tragic local events like wildland fires, shooter gun violence, and COVID-19 have reminded us of the importance of community and caring for family and neighbors. After 30 years of local business experience, volunteerism, and civic involvement, I have learned that listening, an open mind, and teamwork helps build community and improved decision-making. I will use this experience while serving you again, and I will hear your concerns. Finally, I will always assess how council actions will impact our residents and neighborhoods. We will protect our small town residential character and close-knit social fabric. Thank you for your attention and take care.
Thank you so much, Eric. Next is Marjorie Moeller.
Yountville Chamber of Commerce for allowing me to introduce myself. I have lived and worked in Yountville for more than 20 years. I have a BA degree in microbiology from the University of Kansas and did graduate work in the Department of Virology at KU Medical School. I own a pharmaceutical consulting company, and I am currently working on drugs to treat COVID-19. I serve as chair on the Upper Valley Waste Management Agency and on Napa County LAFCO, which establishes service delivery and boundaries for our cities and towns. I was elected to a state board, CalLAFCO, that serves all 58 counties in California, and I received their Outstanding Commissioner of the Year in 2018. I serve on the California League of Cities Environmental Quality Committee, and my service to Yountville includes over 12 ad hoc local committees, including the town hall renovation, parking, greenhouse gas inventory, and library, just to name a few. I enjoy community service. I started Shred It Day in honor of Earth Day. I also started Next Door Yountville and served as the administrator and the Yountville Library Volunteer Program, and I helped start the Napa County Science Fair. I am on the board of the Napa County Historical Society. I love Yountville history and Napa Valley wines. My priorities for another term are to keep Yountville strong and safe. I will continue to spend our money wisely and make sure we have adequate financial reserves. I will maintain the great relationship with our Yountville Sheriff and Napa County Fire Department to keep us safe. Together, we'll work on challenges because together we can go farther than alone, such as affordable housing and workforce housing, balancing the interests of residents and businesses, and find solutions for parking. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marjorie. And last, but certainly not least, Scott Owens.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Yountville Chamber of Commerce, for having us today. I came to Yountville in 2013 on Veterans Day. Maybe that's why I've always felt such a calling to serve since I've been here. My spouse and I came to look at an old house. The house, like the town, brought back memories of New Orleans, but where I grew up. Both were drenched in history and had seen their share of disaster and recovery. We felt welcome here. The house needed a lot of work. Our presentation to the Zoning and Design Review Board was my first introduction to local government, and it would not be my last. A few months later, after frequent visits to the library at the community center, I saw a posting for library commissioner. I applied for the role and was appointed by the town council. I am proud to say that I still volunteer in this position today. Here, I experience both the collaboration and tension that come with community service. It has given me the opportunity to meet so many fellow residents and patrons. I've also learned that I love the process of working with my community to solve problems. My passion for strengthening communities extends to my day job as well. Through my work at 2 nonprofit community foundations for over 16 years, I have helped to steward resources that benefit communities in the arts, community development, education, environment, health, and social justice. My time as a commuter on the Vine 29 has also made me interested in the transportation issues affecting the region. I was appointed by the town council to represent Yountville on the NVTA Citizen Advisory Commission, an opportunity to support transit solutions to improve the quality of life for my neighbors, and of our workforce that we all depend on. A few other things you should know about me. I am curious about my surroundings. I take time to absorb, study, and learn every day. I believe that I embody the qualities that I want to see on the dais: empathy, engagement, respect, patience, leadership with heart for Yountville. I am ready for this job. Everything I have done has prepared me to work with and for Yountville. Please vote for me, and in return, I promise to be a leader with heart who will deliver on a 30-year calling to serve this community. Thank you.
Well, great. And thank you all. We're going to move on now to our question and answer portion. And we're going to begin, as I would like to at least let the audience know, in the order that you just saw the candidates. But in fairness, we're going to then cycle the next question so that everyone gets a chance to go first or second or third or fourth. The Q&A is going to begin. We received dozens of questions that were submitted from the general public. These questions were consolidated and merged into the final list that you'll hear today. 8 questions will be asked by the chamber, and then we will ask questions that have been submitted live from viewers watching on YouTube or Facebook. Please note, not all the questions that are submitted will be asked. We'll do our best to select the questions that haven't already been asked or, again, are non-biased, and allow for the fact-based responses from these candidates. If your question does not get asked this afternoon, we encourage you to contact the candidates or proponents or opponents of the measures themselves. Please feel free to begin submitting your questions now via YouTube or Facebook. Our staff will compile them and have them ready to be asked shortly. Candidates, you will have 1 minute to respond to each question. I will do my best to keep each of you to 1 minute. Again, yellow card, red card, 15 seconds and 5 seconds. And we'll start with the first question for Jeff. During the COVID-19 pandemic, it has become clear that the town's general fund revenues are very dependent on tourism revenue. If the revenue shortfall in transient occupancy tax and sales taxes continues for a longer duration, what impact do you see on the town's budget? And how would you approach adjusting the town's budget to meet available reduced general fund revenue?
Thank you. I want to start by saying I own a hospitality business, not in Yountville, but in the state of California. So I understand the issues going on, especially in our community. I read a great quote that said, "This is a time that is making us better if we use it that way." And I believe the town of Yountville is already using it that way. At last night's meeting, we were discussing the business transitional plan to continue to support our businesses during this pandemic to ensure that they can be successful. So I think just as important on the expense side is the revenue side. We need to ensure that all of our businesses in this community have the opportunity to continue to stay open with the state mandates and be able to generate revenue for our community. On the other side, we are in a very good position with the revenues that we have saved over these years. So thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Well, you know, I messed up all the time earlier, so you'll get a chance I think your enunciation was perfect, so don't rush because of me. Just
It's fine.
thank you for your understanding.
Understood.
All right, we're going to move on to Eric Knight.
Revenue shortfalls continue, and I will support sound and a responsible fiscal policy. I will stand with town staff's recommendations to review funding and investments and guarantee that we are good stewards of the town's pocketbook. 60% of the town's expenditures are public works, public safety, and parks and recreation. I will review these expenditures in our capital improvement projects for short-term savings. But public safety spending will not be reduced. We have been in a similar place after September 11, 2001, when I served on the town council. while COVID-19 will have a larger impact on town revenues, I expect that when increased travel and tourism begins again, we will return sooner. It will return sooner to the Napa Valley, just like it did after 9/11. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your response. Marjorie Moeller.
Is in strong financial shape to meet our current financial challenges because we have wisely put money into numerous reserve funds for just this type of situation. When I was first elected to the town council, we had $300,000 in reserves. When the economic downturn in 2008 hit, our general fund felt the strain. Over the last decade, we have built significant financial reserves. Putting money away for emergency needs has always been a priority for me. We have at least 12 different reserve funds, including the Revenue Stabilization Reserve, the Emergency Reserve Fund, the Budget Contingency Reserve. We even have money put away if we were able to buy the Yountville Elementary School property. This is just a few. We will use reserve funds now as needed, and we will rebuild them again. If budget cuts were needed, I will always maintain essential services such as fire and police and utilities, and I would only consider non-essential services for temporary budget adjustments. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I know I'm trying to do my best to keep everyone as tight as we can. So thank you all for your understanding. Jeff, pardon me, it's Scott Owen's turn. I better go back to my list. Scott Owen's turn.
Thank you, Richard. Yountville has a strong revenue base and fund balance from previous fiscal years and set aside reserves to buffer during times of economic downturn. The town uses a rolling 3-year trend to guide its revenue projections. In its 1992 strategic plan, the town agreed to a tourist-based economy, a model that attracts visitors and provides benefits to residents through transient occupancy tax revenue. COVID-19 reduced TOT revenue by about $2 million in the past fiscal year and decreased TOT by about $2 million in the current year. The town has taken steps to identify expense reductions to maintain a balanced budget and plan ahead with emergency reserve and revenue stabilization funds, which combined total about $4 million. The town's strategic goals are flexible to navigate the residual economic effects of COVID-19. Yountville is in good financial standing, and when we continue to promote tourism, work closely with the Chamber of Commerce, and support our local businesses in recovery, we can continue to operate in a fiscally responsible manner and plan well for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott, and thank you all for your answers to that. I'm going to get back on order here. We're going to now move to the next question, which is, what is your position on Measure T and why? We'll start with Eric Knight. I can't hear him.
Excuse me. That's probably better. Thank you. Thank you, Richard. I recommend a no vote on Measure T. Let me be clear. I support its private use, especially as an alternative treatment for medical issues. Medical marijuana can be purchased in Napa and delivered to Yountville. But Measure T wrongly approves a cannabis business without a clear understanding of the impact on our neighborhoods, our small town, and our successful businesses.
You got time for
The town council.
I'll do better on that.
Can you hear? The town council should encourage more retail diversity and local serving businesses. But in our new general plan on page 105, it states a cannabis business does not qualify as retail diversity. The cannabis industry and retail businesses are in their infancy. I suggest we continue to watch how federal and state regulation changes so we can better understand the effect of a cannabis business in Yountville. I recommend a no vote on Measure T.
Thank you, Eric. I'm starting to feel like a referee in one of these European soccer matches. We'll move on to Marjorie Mueller.
I do not support Measure T because as a pharmaceutical scientist for more than 30 years, my work is focused on the field of drug safety and effectiveness. Many cannabinoid products sold on the market have not been thoroughly tested for quality and safety and effectiveness. Some people think that numerous THC and CBD products on the market have been evaluated by the FDA and have been determined to be safe or they can't hurt. Due to the lack of studies and testing, there is still much that is not known about the potential risk and side effects of sustained and cumulative use, as well as interaction with other medicines. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Margie. That was succinct. Scott Owens.
Measure T is a meticulously crafted ordinance that provides oversight to allow for the consideration of at least one cannabis retail outlet in Yountville. This is not about restricting access. Yountville residents can receive marijuana via delivery and even cultivate plants indoors. My concern with Measure T is the risk to both public health and reputation, as well as the requirement to shield the products from public view, which has the potential to negatively impact the character of Yountville's commercial district. I would prefer to conduct market analysis first to understand the impact to our community, identify a response from business owners, potential consumers, and of course, residents. I'm also hearing from many people in town that this ordinance is not right for Yountville at this time, and perhaps the measure was rolled out before it was fully baked. As a council member, it will be my responsibility to respond to the voice of the people. If this passes, we will need to proceed with the option that will do the least harm. My vote is no on Measure T.
Thank you so much, Scott. And we'll round the horn back to Jeffrey Durham.
Thank you, Richard. So I want to be clear. The question is, what is my position on Measure T? My position is in support. I am not recommending one way or another how our community votes on this issue. As a council member, I voted 5-0 to allow the community to vote on this important matter. I have one vote, just the same as everybody else in this community. I want to also just clarify a point. Not all Yountvilleans have access to cannabis. Not all Yountvilleans are allowed to grow 6 plants nor get delivery. There are over 700 citizens in this community living at the vet's home that do not have access to legalized cannabis that is allowed in the state of California. So I will be supporting this measure. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. We'll move on to our next question for the candidates, and Marjorie Moeller will go first. Our veterans are an important part of our community. How do you plan to engage with the residents and staff at the Yountville Veterans Home?
When I was first elected, I thought we needed to see more veterans in town to believe that we were actively engaging with them. The president of the Allied Council was even asked to give quarterly presentations to the town council. What I soon realized was we should not expect our veterans to come to town unless they want to. We need to go to them and meet with them. The second Wednesday of every month at 9:30 in the morning, their Allied Council meets at the Veterans Home. I have attended and spoken at these meetings for 12 years, and I've probably only missed a few. I share what's new in Yountville, what's fun in Yountville, and meet with many veterans after the meeting to discuss other topics and answer questions. It's been a very rewarding experience to have met so many veterans, become friends, and know them by name.
Well timed. Next, Scott Owens.
Thank you, Richard. I would work to attract and retain new engagement opportunities with members and staff at the Veterans Home of California, and maintain and strengthen existing relationships with the residents and neighbors whom we know, and continue with mutual exchange and participation on committees. The Yountville Library maintains a strong relationship with its offering of patron services and classes in cybersecurity and computers at the Yountville Veterans Home. I would also work to connect Yountville Veterans Home members to accessibility and transportation. Residents of the Veterans Home use the Napa Valley Transportation Authority bus routes 10 and 29 to access regional transportation to services beyond Yountville. It's important to listen to and meet the needs of our neighbors in transportation and socialization. The Veterans Home Allied Council is comprised of Veterans Home members elected to represent residents of the home in external and policy-related manners. I would engage with those members and seek opportunities to connect our resources.
Thank you very much, Scott. We'll move back to Jeffrey Durham.
Thank you, Richard. One of the things I learned early on in the council is that we have a lot of veterans living up at the Veterans Home who are very happy up at the Veterans Home. And I find that, as Councilmember Moeller just stated, actively engaging is the most important point. One of the ways I've done that is as the leader of the Yountville Community Thanksgiving. I find that it's just as important for me to reach out to them just in their day-to-day lives and connect with them through their needs in our community, as well as the Parks and Recs department in our community has done a wonderful job before COVID of intergenerational activities, bringing up the after-school programs that we have here in this town to do our projects with the vets, to learn the history with the vets. And I feel that's the most important way to move forward, is just actively engaging on those day-to-day opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And lastly, on this question, we'll have Eric Knight.
Thank you. I believe in the importance of making connections. And because of COVID-19 rules, Veterans Home members have been isolated from our community. It's time to begin working together, rebuilding our connection and our partnership with the home. I cannot think of a better symbol of building connections than replacing the current walking path with a wider, safer path that will accommodate wheelchairs. I also strongly support the town creating a permanent standing committee for Veterans Affairs so we can work together with Administrator Peak, Calvet, Senator Dodd, and Assemblywoman Aguilar-Curry on the home facility master plan and reopen soon a valuable asset, the Veterans Home Pool for members and all town residents. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to our next question. And if I haven't made too many calculation errors here, I think that Scott Owens, you're on deck. The next question is, how would you propose the town meet the state mandated housing requirements given that we are nearly built out in the town of Yountville? You have a minute.
Yes, thank you. Hearing of the new RHNA numbers yesterday of 70, it's important to identify opportunities for existing housing, multifamily apartments or homes within town to convert to town-managed, deed-restricted, affordable, or workforce housing. But in the absence of waiting for the few opportunities that may come available, the town council and staff have taken a proactive approach to partnering with the Veterans Home of California by moving forward with SB2 funding to support rehabilitation of existing single-family homes on the property. The town applied for and received funds to hire a consultant to make this happen. It was a smart move. Staff identified and obtained the grant funds, and this shows a commitment to partner with the Veterans Home on its workforce housing. Also, the town should continue its effort to purchase and develop the Yountville Elementary School land, as well as enact policies to incentivize property owners to identify ways to increase density in the central business corridor. Thank you.
See, you guys, we practice these minutes. They work really well. We'll move on to Jeff Durham. Same question.
Thank you very much. As Scott stated, we just have been advised that our new housing numbers will be 70, and we're almost completely built out. What is interesting as well is that we do have, before the COVID came up, excess land up at the Vets Home to consider. We have excess land possibly to work with the church at the south side of town. And then we also, of course, have opportunities at the school. And also as a council member, I voted to put Measure S on the ballot 2 years ago, which ensures that the town now has funding for housing. It currently has over $1 million in that fund. This was an increase of 1% in the TOT, so our guests are paying for it. Our guests are paying for our opportunities to have more housing in the future. So thank you.
Thank you. I didn't have to even pull a card that time. Next, and we might do a quick sound check with you, Eric Knight, for the same question with regards to housing. Could you remove your headset? Let's see if you can unplug that and we can hear you a little better, Eric. I just want to give that a quick try.
Can you hear me better now?
Perfect. Let's go. You got a minute. Good luck.
Thank you. The town will be updating our general plan's housing element very soon. The housing element is our goals and the guide for future housing. After consultation with the California Veterans Home members, the town should support CalVet's efforts to provide workforce housing for staff and their families. We can also continue to support well-designed accessory dwelling units or second units and support and protect our neighborhoods from short-term rentals. Finally, I believe we need a clear policy in our housing element that housing is our first land use priority. When we support a creative and diverse housing policy, then we guarantee a sustainable and vibrant residential community for people to live, work, and for residents to locally shop in Yountville.
Eric, thank you. Your sound was much better. You can remove your earbuds, I think. You might hear us better. The last person for this question is Marjorie Moeller.
Thank you. California state law mandates a housing element in our general plan, which we have just completed, to plan for and accommodate housing. Our regional housing needs are determined by the Association of Bay Area Government, and they determine the number at each income level for Yountville. Yountville needs to meet the housing needs of people at all income levels. In the current 8-year cycle, we still need to build 1 low income and 3 very low income housing units. And as you've heard, 70 more housing units will be assigned to Yountville for the next 8-year cycle, starting in 2 years. The town has policies, procedures, and zoning in place to help us reach these goals for much needed housing. Yes, we are challenged with space to build, but there are certainly possibilities. We have zoned a parcel south of the Catholic Church. We could also build some housing on the Yountville Elementary School property if we were to obtain it. We have numerous accessory dwelling units throughout our neighborhoods, and the Veterans Home could certainly be a site for their workforce. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you all. And I know this feels like it's pressure, but this was the way to make it interesting, more fun for me. We'll move on to the next question. And again, everyone's doing a wonderful job. I think technology is working for us now. So everyone give yourselves a pat on the back. We're almost halfway through. I say almost because it's not really halfway through yet. The town's water and wastewater systems are critical for Yountville, given predictions that costs will continue to increase. What will you do when the town council needs to review and reconsider the rate structure for these systems? How does a veterans home factor into your consideration? And we're back to the beginning again. We'll start with Jeffrey Durham.
Thank you, Richard. The veterans home has to factor into our consideration. And actually, the veterans home is probably 95% of our consideration. We are 100% reliant on the veterans home for our water. When an issue happens at the veterans home, Rector Reservoir, our source of water, happens, we then turn around and have to buy very expensive water from Napa. We did our rate cycle 3 years ago to raise water rates, to update them. We are now 3 years into it. We just had a recap. And we also found out at the same time that we have to do $1 million worth of pipe replacement in Washington Park. We are able to do that. And we need to make sure that as we reevaluate this, that we realize that water is definitely a right, but the enterprise fund is set up as such that we need to pay for that right as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. We'll have Eric Knight.
Thank you. The town actively monitors the funding and expenses for the Utility Enterprise Fund. I support town staff's proactive efforts to keep our water and sewer fees at the lowest possible cost. Efforts like upgrading equipment and identifying wineries and vineyards who can use our treated wastewater help keep costs down. The town commissioned a rate study in 2018 and authorized a specific annual increase. I support smart, regular increases and the council's decision to allocate some emergency water funds to support the fee structure. The Veterans Home is a long-standing partner. We purchase state water and share the waste treatment plan. Here's another reason why I support the council creating a permanent Veterans Standing Committee so we can discuss issues and deal with concerns in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And we're having still a little bit of challenge with your vocals, and I don't. It was fine a moment ago, so we'll keep working on that. Next, we have Marjorie Moeller.
The town owns and operates our wastewater system, and we have sufficient financial reserves to maintain our wastewater system. And actually, we might even be able to lower rates. The town does not own or operate our water system. Rector Reservoir, which is owned by the state and operated by the Veterans Home, we have found that water costs have increased $700,000 beyond our projections. And when problems occur at Rector, we have to purchase water from the city of Napa, which is very expensive. These costs have increased $500,000 beyond our projection. The emergency water line replacement project in Washington Park will cost over $1 million. We are borrowing this money to complete the project from another reserve fund we wisely established, but we'll need to pay ourselves back. We expect water rates to increase to cover these shortfalls.
Thank you, Margie. And last on this topic will be Scott Owens.
Thank you, Richard. Water management is critical to the life force in Yountville, and residents and businesses benefit from a source, the Rector watershed and reservoir just a few miles away. The relationship with the Veterans Home of California is as crucial as the resource because the Veterans Home owns it, and Yountville ratepayers purchase water at varying rates, increasing gradually each year. In turn, the Veterans Home of California relies on Yountville Public Works for its wastewater treatment. As a council member, I will work closely with the Veterans Home to maintain the infrastructure of the reservoir, as purchasing water on the spot market or from the city of Napa is much more expensive. I would maintain the collaborative relationship with the Veterans Home for wastewater treatment, as well as promote conservation efforts and sale of the treated water. Reduced water consumption will equal less cost. Conservation and education are key. Yountville Public Works is a model for its water treatment and recycling. It's a source of pride for me as a resident. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. And again, thank you all for your response to that. We'll move on to the sixth question. And I believe, Eric, you will be first. And maybe I'll do a quick sound check when you get on. Can you give me a hello?
Hello there.
That's perfect. So don't change
Good.
that.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Here's the question. What is your process for validating people's concerns on issues, even if you do not agree with their position?
Thanks, Richard. So I believe it's a responsibility of a council member to encourage dialogue, listen to residents and business owners' concerns and presentations with an open mind, and then to seek consensus. I may not always agree with someone's opinion or their understanding of the facts, but we can agree to disagree and still come together, find common ground, and move forward. When we can safely meet in the future, the town should plan an annual government open house day so residents can meet staff and discuss issues away from formal meetings. Our focus is to ensure residents know their opinion and perspective has been heard, and that will result in a greater community support of council decisions. Thank you.
No red card for you. This is my favorite part. So next we have Marjorie Moeller.
Whether I agree or not, I use the same process. I first try to clarify the issue and really understand what the need is or issue, and then I try to understand what I know and what I don't know about the problem, and I then work with staff to see maybe if they have any additional information. I gather information from all interested parties, and some people just, who maybe I just pass on the street and ask a question. Then I really try to define the problem and determine if it's feasible to really solve the issue. And once I have made that determination, I evaluate positive and negative impacts on the whole community and then make the best decision for all of Yountville.
Man, that's perfect timing. Thank you so much, Marjorie. We'll move on to Scott Owens.
Thank you. In a position of civil service, it is incumbent upon the representative to listen to all concerns, whether I agree or not. Additionally, it is important to identify and offer a rationale for my decision. The public hearing is the forum for ideas and comments. A healthy exchange of information may bring about resolution, perhaps unexpected agreement or a change of heart. As importantly, the opportunity to move forward to future decisions on which we may agree. I commit to practicing empathy, respect, and patience to achieve the outcome. Empathy, I think, most importantly, because it involves seeing the issue from another perspective, and it's enlightening when that is put into practice. Thank you.
And thank you. And the last person for this question, Jeff Durham.
Thank you, Richard. And I must admit, I have Richard Hall to thank you for my office hours. When I got onto the council, I met with Richard and we discussed some ideas. And one of them was office hours, which I have had since day one of being on the council. My ads in the paper every 2 weeks, my mobile numbers in there, as well as my email to get together with me face-to-face, to text me, to call me, to email me, to discuss. I think outreach is an important aspect of all of the council members, especially for myself moving forward. I think validation is an interesting word because to validate is the act of confirming something as true or correct. I think what's more important is mindful listening. Mindful listening and being aware and paying attention to everyone that I'm interacting with so that they know that their concerns, ideas, and feedback are being heard. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. We have a little bit of sound or audio there, so I trust everyone is still with us on the web. I haven't heard of any strange altercations outside of the town of Yountville, so hopefully you're all still with us. We'll move on to our next question. And I believe, I have to remember now who's next, but Marjorie Moeller will be queued up. What is your opinion of the town's retail diversity policy? What would you do to improve or modify retail diversity in town?
During a vacation to the state of Maine a while back, I visited a lot of small shops and I saw one shop that sold local blueberry pies on the left side of the store and hardwares and lobster traps on the other side. And when I returned to Yountville, I asked Steve Rogers if Maybe something like this would work for our many wine tasting rooms. Why not wine and retail? Steve then developed a plan for the council to discuss, and the council adopted a retail diversity policy for our wine tasting rooms. So 25% of the floor space allocated in each wine tasting room is to non-wine merchandise. Everybody loves the gift shop at the museum, don't they? I am always open to see if our policies are working, if they can be improved or modified. I'd love to hear from businesses and residents alike to see if they think we need to make some changes. So thank you.
And thank you, Margie. I'm just going to give a quick check to the soundboard. Can you give me the thumbs up in the backstage that you've got us still connected? Okay. We're getting a little bit of feedback. So again, welcome to 2020 and technology from Margie. I believe that the next presenter is Scott Owens.
Yountville boasts numerous successful wine tasting establishments, each of which is required to include accessory retail at 25%. I'd like to gauge the sales or success rate of the retail portion of tasting rooms in Yountville, some of which introduce local crafts, while some may duplicate what larger retail establishments already offer in the area. It is important to feature local artists and flavors. The winery requirement is a pleasant diversion from a market with a plethora of fine offerings in the liquid form. I would encourage retail diversity, working in concert with Brookfield Properties V Marketplace, to encourage a retail evolution into a grand space in the center of town, which is zoned retail overlay. Partnering with the Chamber of Commerce to analyze, understand, and offer options to businesses that want to have a presence in our beautiful town, and where possible, offering support to locally owned small businesses. And also recognize those 9 non-winery retail businesses here in town where you can purchase shoes, jackets, and hostess gifts. Thank you.
Well, that's what happens when I mute myself. Thanks, Vince. You're supposed to bail me out. We'll move back to Jeffrey Durham.
So I get 2 minutes, Richard?
An extra 5 seconds on me.
Thank you. I think the town has the right intention with our retail diversity policy. We've continued to discuss it on the current council, and we will continue to adapt it moving forward. I think the important discussion is the 14 plus empty retail shops in town, the empty restaurants sitting on our main drag of Washington Street. We need to realize how to move forward with those businesses. My experience over the last 6 years of working with the planning department, working with use permits, and of course parking, has given me a great idea of how best to move forward with our retail in this town. What can we do to ask them to have a community relations plan? We can also ask them to have a community benefits plan. And how are they going to interact with the neighborhoods? Those are all important questions that we can definitely have moving forward with retail in town. Okay.
Thank you, Jeff. And I appreciate you allowing me to throw the red card out. I will do better with mute next time. So I think that was our last question on Eric. Oh, I'm sorry, Eric, you're not forgotten. I lost my order because I was distracted. Eric Knight.
Thank you, Richard. I hope people can hear me. Bringing more local serving and retail diversity to town is a difficult task, to be honest. When we live just 9 miles from a city, I do not have a quick solution to increasing retail diversity in Yountville. The current town's retail diversity policy does need further review, interpretation, and must provide clearer direction in the future for development. I suggest that the town council and staff, residents, businesses, and the Chamber of Commerce create a task force to discuss opportunities for more retail diversity and local serving businesses in town. In the short term, I hope we encourage innovative individuals to offer more pop-up retails that the residents can enjoy. Thank you.
And thank you for ceding back time to me. I'll do better. This is our last question. And then after this question, we're going to go to closing candidate statements. So the final question, and we'll start with Scott Owens, is by many accounts, Yountville is the envy of the small towns in Napa Valley. What is your vision for the future of Yountville, and how do we evolve as a community? Scott.
Yountville is the envy of many of our neighbors because we enjoy open space and parks and walkways, a small town atmosphere, historic architecture, unique character, exceptional dining options, wine, and great celebrations throughout the year. While we cannot stop time and trap the town in amber, we need to evolve. I support policies that would reduce congestion in the Old Town and Commercial District using electric shuttles, trains, satellite parking to bring people into town, thereby result in fewer cars on the streets. This, combined with a climate action plan to reduce greenhouse gases, could result in an even more walkable town where residents and visitors enjoy all that the town has to offer, preserve the surrounding agricultural lands and character that draws the attention of our neighbors, and more. Thank you.
Thank you. Next will be Jeff Durham.
Oh, thank you, Richard. I just want to say that we will continue to evolve. Everything evolves, and through my 17 years of living here, I'm very, very happy of what Yountville is today, and I'm very happy to be a part of that future. As I discussed in my opening statement, retail diversity is important. Retail support, especially during this current situation, is very important. We need to continue to have the fiscal responsibility that we have, and as part of the ad hoc committee, to help ensure proper reserves for the employee benefits and retirement, that's being done. I also would be remiss if I did not bring up parking. It's a huge issue for a good portion of our town. It's not throughout the whole community, but it is an issue that we need to continue to work with the businesses to ensure the parking is taken care of and that our community is taken care of as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. Next, we will have Eric Knight.
Thank you. My focus will be to successfully implement our new general plan because that will help protect our small town residential character. We achieve that goal by always considering how the impact of council decisions on residents in our neighborhoods. We are first and foremost a residential community. Visitors travel here because of a keen interest in the exceptional food, wine, and hospitality, but many return to Yountville because of our welcoming community and charm. We should always make every effort to support our largest neighborhood, California Veterans Home, and its members. My hope, my vision is we continue to work together to build a successful, diverse, caring, and beautiful community in the heart of the Napa Valley. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Marjorie Moeller.
Before Yountville was incorporated in 1965, Yountville was probably best known for its bars and its brothels. The very first town council and every council since has worked hard to make Yountville a better place for its residents. We welcomed the Bellagio Hotel when they were looking for a location to build, and Yountville became the town of yes. Let's give it a try. Once Yountville had a nice hotel, great restaurants, and more hotels and wine tasting rooms followed. The revenue provided by these businesses allowed Yountville to flourish and become the jewel of the Napa Valley. Today, we see St. Helena struggling financially and just now thinking about approving a new hotel. I will admit it is sometimes difficult to find the balance between businesses and residents, but I endorse the concept of yes. The future of Yountville depends on having an open mind, looking at the big picture, considering all options, and saying yes to trying new things. I believe we'll be open to change, but mindful of our history and small town charm.
Thank you so much. And thank you all the candidates for your thoughtful questions. It's now time, as I mentioned earlier, for the closing statements. Each of you will have 1 minute for your closing statement. We're going to go back to the original alphabetical order. So Jeff has to go first 3 times. It was pretty close. We did a good job. You have 1 minute, Jeff. You're up.
Thank you very much, Richard. Yountville is about community. Our community members are homeowners, renters, business owners, workforce employees, second homeowners, vets, and even visitors to our town. We are this collective voice. With my outreach through office hours, I've heard the community's voice on ideas, feedback, and concerns. As the leader of the Yountville Community Thanksgiving, I've had an opportunity for this event to be an additional means of outreach, especially with our veterans. I will continue my outreach to all members of our community to ensure all voices are heard and taken into account. All contribute to the collective voice. For this vote to determine the future of Yountville, we can honor the past and accept that our community is diverse and multi-layered, requiring us to listen and act upon a broader set of opinions. Yountville will continue to progress and still be the charming small town that we call home. A vote for Jeff is a vote for community. Vote Jeff for Yountville Town Council. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeff, for your participation. We'll have next Eric Knight's closing statement.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to our candidates forum today. When I first served on the town council in 1997, I was 36 years old. Today, I'm 59 years old. And since the end of my second council term in 2005, I've continued my involvement in Yountville's community affairs. I'm a 25-year member of Yountville of Kiwanis and a volunteer for Yountville Focus for the same amount of time, helping both groups to raise college funds for Yountville youth and to better our community. Now is our time to not only choose national candidates and their vision for the future, but to choose local candidates to lead our beautiful community. I humbly ask for your support and your vote. I look forward to serving you again. Thank you and take care.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you for your participation. We will next have Marjorie Moeller.
Thank you, Richard Hall and the Yountville Chamber for hosting this debate. I believe in open and transparent decision-making process in our local government. Before every council meeting, I thoroughly research every agenda item and reach out to the community for discussion and input. I will balance the needs of our businesses that fuel our economic engine with the needs of our residents. One of my top priorities is to maintain adequate financial reserves to keep Yountville financially strong. Another priority for me is to keep Yountville safe. The Yountville Sheriff and the Napa County Fire Department are doing an outstanding job. We have one of the safest communities in the valley. I will continue to support this partnership. We have hundreds of heroes living in Yountville at the largest veterans home in the United States. Thank you, veterans, for your sacrifices to keep us safe. I am honored to serve Yountville, and I respectfully ask for your vote on November the 3rd.
It's like you practiced that to a minute. Thank you, Marjorie. And lastly, but not leastly, Scott Owens.
Thank you. In closing, I have the courage to present before you today with my fellow candidates and have the conviction to state that I can do this job and I want this job. The protocols set for me strengthen my resolve to tackle the issues and work with a strong and dedicated team at Yountville Town Hall. Trying something new is difficult. Change is hard. I'm the new guy, and my fellow candidates have served 6, 8, 12 years. Know that I am accessible and available to listen to your concerns. Please visit my website, owenstowncouncil.com, to connect. Thank you for your attention today, and please vote Scott Owens, Yountville Town Council.
And thank you, Scott. And again, all of our town council candidates. I know everyone's at home giving a virtual applause. So you all need to be commended, technology aside. You all did an excellent job. So thank you for your participation and your thoughtful questions or thoughtful answers to our questions. We encourage any of those that are watching that didn't have or hear something that they were looking to hear, reach out to the candidates directly if you have additional questions. So the next section for tonight is we're moving into the Measure T. Let's make that question and answer section come forward. We'll be talking to both the proponents and opponents of Measure T. A little background. In 2016, California voters approved Proposition 64, the Adult Use of Marijuana Act. The act allows the possession, sale, and cultivation of adult use cannabis and authorizes local jurisdictions to prohibit or regulate cannabis retail businesses. Prior to the adoption of Prop 64, cannabis was only permitted in California for medical use. Earlier this summer, the Town Council placed the cannabis ballot measure on the November 3rd, 2020 ballot, officially designated as Measure T. Measure T would authorize the Town Council to permit one cannabis retail business where adult use cannabis could be sold, consumed on site, and or delivered in or out of town. The cannabis retail business could not be located in a residential zone. Measure T can only be adopted if approved by a majority of the Yountville registered voters, 50% plus one, casting ballots in the November 3 election. Before we begin with our question and answer session, I'd like to remind our viewers the Yountville Chamber received dozens of questions submitted from the general public. These questions were consolidated and merged into the final list you'll hear today. 5 questions will be asked by the Chamber. We will then ask questions that have been submitted live from viewers watching on YouTube or Facebook. And I know there's a bunch of you out there, so don't be afraid. As a reminder, if you're logged into your YouTube or Facebook account and watching live on these platforms, you can submit a question live. Please note, not all questions that are submitted will be asked. We'll do our best to select questions that have not already been asked and or non-biased and allow for fact-based responses. If your question does not get asked this afternoon, we encourage you to contact the proponents or opponents of Measure T directly. Please feel free to begin submitting your questions via YouTube or Facebook now. Our staff will compile them and have them ready to be asked shortly. Joining us today, representing the proponents of Measure T, are Jeff Durham and Larry Kamer. Representing the opponents of Measure T are Billy Hewitt and Andrew Hoxie. Pardon me. Each side will be given 2 minutes for an opening statement. We're going to still use the same red card, yellow card for timing. So please do your best to assist me in keeping us on time. We're going to begin today with the proponents. So I will leave the floor to Larry and Jeff to begin. You have 2 minutes.
Hello, everybody. I'm Larry Kamer, and I am joining this conversation not as a member of the political inside group or even somebody who's been actively monitoring this issue, but just as somebody who has looked at the facts, looked at the issues, and come to the conclusion that I believe Measure T is worth a yes vote. For those of you who don't know me, I am a marketing and communications consultant for more than 30 years. I represent clients in the wine and hospitality and healthcare industries. I've been active in the community as a volunteer at the Pathway Home, the Napa County Mental Health Board, and my synagogue. I'm a member of this chamber, and I lived here in Yountville for 6 years with my wife, Deborah Smith. I also want to point out I have no economic interest in the outcome of Measure T one way or the other. What leads me to vote yes is one, facts matter more than ever. And I believe that much of the opposition that I have heard to Measure T is based on fear. Based on fear and based on stereotypes of the kind of people who use cannabis. Cannabis relieves suffering across multiple demographics. Those people, that element, are, I'm sorry to say, stereotypes. And I've unfortunately heard a lot of that in this discussion. As Jeff mentioned earlier, we have 700 fellow citizens who cannot access cannabis legally or even get it delivered to them. And finally, I'll just say, read the ordinance carefully. It is a may or may not decision for the council. I trust the council to make this decision, and I don't believe it is in their democratic interest to bring every policy decision to the voters, especially when this council does such a great job.
Wow, we looked like triplets for a second there. Thank you very much, Larry and Jeffrey. We'll now move on to the opponents, Billy Hewitt and Andrew Hoxie. You have 2 minutes.
That's Andrew. Andrew will take the 2 minutes.
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
You're good now.
Okay, so I will give the opening, Billy will give the closing. So I have 4 minutes, correct?
2 minutes, Andrew, please.
Well, some would call this measure progressive. I argue that it's just the opposite. It's very regressive. No matter how the proponents of this measure spin it, this is going to be a high-end smoking lounge. It will be expensive. It will require a reservation to a bunker-like facility greeted by an armed guard. No matter how you argue it, that will not be a very accommodating place for the veterans home residents that you speak of. And yes, Measure T is vague and amendable at almost any time. And frankly, I am unable to believe that this is a true measure of the will of the people, given the relentless attempts of some of our elected officials to influence the outcome of this measure. Yountville Voice does not specifically oppose marijuana or recreationally or medicinal use, but it in reality does not give residents any rights that they don't already have. This is for the tourist trade only. It is doubtful that it will generate the income projected, and the income certainly will not make up for the increased expense in law enforcement and emergency medical treatment, not to mention stress on our existing businesses from a safety and liability standpoint. Further, a recreational smoking lounge is not compatible with the image of Yountville. As a culinary and fine wine tasting destination, this will not contribute positively to our image. We are the envy of the whole world. Why experiment with that success? It's actually comical to allow the cannabis business to piggyback on our reputation. Thank you.
And thank you. Thank you to all for your quick introductions. We're going to move into the questions that we received from the community. Each side will have 1 minute for each question, and I will continue to do my best to keep us on time. So like we did with the prior section, we'll start with this time the opponents, and then we'll have the proponents go next, and then we'll go vice versa. So everyone gets a chance to go first at least a few times. So the first question for the opponents, so that'll be Andrew Hoxie or Billy Hewitt. Please describe in some detail what the proposed cannabis retail ordinance would allow to occur in town.
Well, that's an interesting question. And I think, and if you don't mind, I'm going to read some of this so I can get through in 1 minute. I think that we'll have a business which is mostly inconsistent with our general plan, which was adopted a year ago. And as most of you know, we spent nearly $1 million on consultants and staff to implement this general plan. With respect to the commercial development in the general plan, it emphasized the need for commercial development that provides necessary services to residents, that provide for business diversity beyond tasting rooms and restaurants, that included a welcoming streetscape, oh dear, and fits with the charming local character of Yountville. This plan was entitled Envision. Well, we can't envision a consumption business with licensed security personnel on board. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And that was right in time. You had more. There's always more. We'll move that now to the proponents. I think I have that correct.
Thank you, Richard. I'm going to answer this question by correcting some of the opponents' opening statements that were either blatant misfacts or attacks on me personally. First of all, I want to comment, as I did last night at the council meeting, there has been no relentless attempt to promote by any council member in this town, yes or no, on this measure. I want to be clear. I voted with the remainder of the council 5-0 to allow the community to vote on this issue. I have one vote and one vote only. So I wanted to make that clear. I also want to make clear there will be no smoking bunker. The reason I like this ordinance, that I have read all 17 pages, is because it allows for local control and design. I also want to be absolutely clear. No ordinance anywhere calls for an armed guard of any business, especially cannabis, in Yountville. And lastly, it's not for the tourist trade only. We conveniently keep the 700 citizens of this town in the Veterans Home out of this conversation, as they've done the last 6 months and through this election cycle. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. And I know we're all doing our best, and this is an important issue, and it is emotionally charged. And I'm gonna be the moderator. I'm gonna be, and I'm gonna do my very best to yank the curtain back if you guys would allow me, please. So this is first to the proponents. The next question we have is explain the similarities and differences of cannabis use compared to the consumption of wine or other alcohol, possibly even from one of our tasting rooms or restaurants. Jeff or Larry? Jeff or Larry there. We're going to go with the proponents first, please. Thank you.
We need to recognize, if we're going to take a cold, hard look at the facts, that the amount of crime and violence caused by alcohol use is 10 times higher than it is by marijuana use. And I will share that citation with anyone. 40% of violent crimes involve alcohol, yet we have a town that prides itself on consumption of wine and cocktails, and I'm a big customer of all of those things. But I think we have to look at the facts. Alcohol you drink. I've never been prescribed a Negroni, although I wish my doctor would. Whereas cannabis comes in vape, beverage, topicals, patches, edibles, sublingual sprays. You can ingest the fresh cannabis flower. There's lots of different ways to treat lots of different ailments. And I would remind people that cannabis it relieves pain and suffering for an awful lot of people. It is just wrong to characterize them as a bunch of potheads who are going to smoke and lay around like an opium den. That's just a stereotype.
Thank you so much. We'll move over to the opponents on this same question.
There is a tremendous difference between a pharmacy, medical dispensary, and what is proposed here, a smoking lounge. As far as the tasting room goes, cannabis is consumed in the smoking lounge to get high. Our ag preserve is successful because we make wine that is among the best in the world. Our tasting rooms are an adjunct to growing and making fine wine and the education of our consumers of that locally grown product. The differences in clones, microclimates, pairing with food, and a host of other quality factors. Properly accomplished, a tasting component is accompanied by a spit bucket by staff specifically trained to cut off participants that have been overserved. Tasting marijuana is about getting high. You can't uninhale the smoke that is in your lungs.
Thank both groups for their respect to the timing. We'll go ahead and keep the same group up, Vince, if you don't mind. We're going to have the opponents on this next question. Other small California cities, including Cotati, Sebastopol, Fairfax, Aptos, Carmel, Pacific Grove, and South Lake Tahoe, have retail cannabis permits. High-end tourist destinations such as Aspen, Breckenridge, Snowmass, Telluride, and Trinidad have also have cannabis retail establishments in operation. Describe the pros and cons for Yountville if voters approve Measure T, given these other communities.
Thank you. This is my question. All of those other communities that are mentioned here have no on-site consumption. For on-site consumption in the state of California, you have to go, there is nothing between San Francisco, Oakland, and Los Angeles unless you take a side trip to Lompoc. 2/3 of the California towns and municipalities have refused to have cannabis in there, even a dispensary. There is no mention of a dispensary in the ordinance. You keep talking about medical for the vets. There is no mention of a dispensary. But anyway, let's talk about Aspen. Aspen, in the face of a pandemic, has refused to have on-site consumption because they want to take care of the health and welfare of all of their workers and of their community. I feel that there are very few pros and a lot of cons, but my time is up. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. We'll address the same question to the proponents, Larry and Jeff.
Thank you. I'll just answer a quick question that was just brought up by the opponent, and that is medicinal is not brought up in this 17-page ordinance because it is a given. So a type 10 retail license for adult use, if voted on by the community of Yountville, will also allow medicinal based on the California state law. So if a type 10 retail spot opens in town, you will bring your medical marijuana card in, you will not pay taxes, and you will have all the rights of a medical dispensary as well. It's not in the ordinance because it's already in the California state law. And Larry?
I think I would add to that is, I want to push back on this stereotype that the only people who use cannabis are smoking it to get high. Tell that to the people who use cannabis to relieve chronic pain, PTSD, seizure disorders, Crohn's disease, HIV, hepatitis C, and cancer. Again, I really urge us to deal in facts and not in stereotypes. You're muted, Richard.
Thank you. It told me I was muted. I just ignored it. Thank you all for your attention to the time. We'll go ahead and keep the opponents up. They'll answer this next, proponents up. They'll answer this question. Thank you for the triplets being on screen. The next question is, what is the cost benefit analysis that's been done to have a cannabis retail business in the town of Yountville?
I'm going to give a quick answer, and then Larry's going to finish so eloquently like he has done these last couple of questions. We have over 14 businesses in this town that are currently vacant. I think that retail diversity is a huge component that needs to be considered. We have set up a huge list of parameters for this legal business, if the voters vote for it, to be in this town. And if it passes, there's still very, very many layers that one business owner who wanted to be in town would have to go through. And all of that will be played out on the council level as well. Larry?
Process, a lengthy evaluation process, a narrowing process. This business would have to get a use permit, a commercial cannabis license from Yountville, and then from the state. I don't know of any other business that has to jump through those kinds of hoops and that will have the stamina to go for the months or even years that it will take to get approval. So I'll stop there. Thank you, Richard.
Gentlemen, oh gosh. This, me and backstage, we're wrestling on who's going to mute me because everyone wants to. So with that, we'll move on to the opponents of the measure. The same question, cost benefit analysis related to cannabis retail in town. Do you have a minute?
Yeah, from my perspective, this is a risk benefit. It's not a cost benefit. The only benefit that makes any sense whatsoever is the revenue associated with it, estimated between $30,000 and $100,000. Given our budget, that's 1% of the town's budget. It's really inconsequential. As we know, this is largely a cash business. The state of California's own website mentions tax fraud. That's shorthand for money laundering and inability to collect the sales taxes. The risks associated with this are an increase in crime. I've independently talked to several deputy sheriffs that have the expectation we will see an increase in DUIs, unlawful juvenile consumption, and even armed robbery given the extra cash floating about town. You have only to look at the recent looting of no on T signs to see what is coming at you as far as crime. The safety of residents and staff with the potency of today's product. You may not experience the mellow high that people seek. Rather, the drug exasperates irrational panic, paranoia, and erratic behavior. I have a list more. My time's up. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And to all of our live viewers out there, please know that there certainly is follow-up opportunity with regards to reaching out directly to the opponents or proponents of the measure to learn more. We'll go to our last question, and we'll go ahead and stay with Andrew Hoxie and Billy Hewitt. If voters do approve Measure T, how would you work with the town council, staff, and the public on next steps related to cannabis retail in Yountville?
Well, it could be a question also, what if Measure T is defeated? I think this is an important question, and whatever the outcome is, I think what our residents and our staff and our council have to do is get rid of the divisiveness that this has caused. Are we willing to put division aside and work together, whether it's deciding on a business permit, on increased water rates? We have to put it aside. I can say we have been accused of being fearful. A lot of our cannabis daily using friends have said no to a shop in Yountville. They are perfectly happy to get their ingredients from Napa, Vallejo, Santa Rosa. And we're accused of being not thoughtful and fearful. I think you would find that most of the people are very smart. And by voting on this is the ultimate local control. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you both. We'll move over to the opponents, Jeff Durham and Larry Kamer.
Proponents. Yes?
Oh, proponents. Did I say it backwards? I'm
That's okay.
no comment.
The process that I understand it, is very clear going forward on what happens if the council, if Measure T is supported and the council goes ahead and begins to consider the process. I would stress to everyone, you read the ordinance, it is a may or may not decision. The council is not compelled to issue a license or even to say yes, first. Second, I would think that if this were going to be a high risk of crime, we would have heard from our sheriff who patrols Yountville, and his deputies patrol Yountville. I haven't heard from him. I haven't heard him say anything about what a danger or a risk this would be. I attach a lot to that. And finally, I would urge us all to go back to the very sincere words I have heard in this conversation about a town that is open-minded, wants to try new things, and has the spirit of yes. Yes, there are risks in allowing certain new businesses, but if we look at the facts, let the staff and the council do their job, I trust them. I think they will come up with the right decision.
Excellent. Thank you all for your questions. As you know, we've been fielding questions live, and we do have a couple of follow-up questions. We have at least one follow-up question. I want to be sensitive to time, knowing that there is a small debate going on slightly after this one concludes, and many of you want to be prepared for that. So I'll ask the one question that I find is important, given that we're in the middle of this COVID-19 pandemic, and that is the following. And we'll start with and I'll get this right this time, the proponents. You'll be answering first, so Jeff and Larry. And this one is, does the fact that the state's emergency orders related to COVID-19 that defined cannabis stores as essential business that are allowed to remain open have any impact on how you view the cannabis industry?
Jeff, you want to take that?
I was going to defer to you because
So what I'll say is we should read a lot into the fact that the state of California views cannabis dispensaries and retail establishments as essential in the time of COVID. They do not, much to the chagrin of many of my wine clients, regard tasting rooms as essential. Cannabis is medicine. Cannabis is used by a lot of people to relieve pain and suffering. So let's understand what these establishments do and who they sell to. They sell to people who look an awful lot like the people on this call.
We're triplets. Are you saying something? Thank you for your answer, and in such short time frame. We'll move on to the opponents. Do I need to reread the question, Andrew, Hoxie, or Billy?
I'll answer that.
Thank you.
It's I agree. There's a large number who use cannabis for medicinal purposes, and from the emails that I get from the 2 dispensaries I have used, they have remained open and are available for curbside service, just like a lot of the restaurants. You can get takeout, you can order, and they will meet you at the curb as long as you have a card for their business. So in that way, they're essential, as is food. You can get takeout food, you can get takeout cannabis, you can get takeout from Target and Walmart and all of the other stores also. Thank you.
Excellent. And thank you all so much for your participation. I'm going to go back to my notes. We do have time, and we're going to follow up with 2 minutes of closing statements. And thank you to everyone who has submitted questions. We're going to begin with the proponents, Larry and Jeff. You'll have 2 minutes for your closing statements in favor of Measure T.
That's you, Jeff.
Thank you. I'm going to answer a couple of questions that were put out by the opponent statements. The theft of the no on the T signs, the town has taken that very seriously, as well as the sheriffs in our town. And let's be honest, as well as some of the tourists who've decided that they'd be fine souvenirs when they go home. Secondly, I have spoken with our local sheriff, who's based here in town, well over 8 months ago to present this ordinance to him, and followed up this week. We had lengthy conversation about mitigation, about standard operating procedures to ensure that if this legalized business came into town, that we would have the local control and the control of our local sheriffs to ensure that it is a law-abiding business. I have to address smoking lounges. I want to be absolutely clear what the ordinance says. The ordinance says on-site consumption. I asked for that to be included in the ordinance for 3 reasons. We have 454 hotel rooms in this town, and I don't think the tourists should be going back home into their rooms smoking. We have 7 outdoor parks that do not allow smoking, and I don't think our community should be going into the park smoking. We also, I will remind everyone, have 700 plus community members who do not have access to cannabis. And I felt the on-site smoking consumption would allow for their legalized use. And I want to be clear, the ordinance does not shoehorn an on-site consumption into any location in our community. If through the lengthy process that it would fit into a space, it could be a consideration. If it does not, it will not be allowed. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And lastly, in closing, the opponents of Measure T, Billy Hewitt and Andrew.
It's my turn, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, in closing, I would like to read to you, first of all, an email that I got from a resident here in Yountville. And it says, and I'm quoting, "It is very difficult for many people who live and work in Yountville to watch the erosion of our community. We've lost our school and the shops in V Marketplace. We've watched graveled areas bulldozed over by blacktop surfaces. Measure T and heightened thievery has divided our town. We pray that this destructive ruination does not continue. The entry of cannabis retail may be the one biggest mistake this town has ever seen. Please do not let this happen to us." And I don't want to debate, but I happen to have been one of the places where the sign was stolen, and I had a camera on it. Because it was stolen once, it was stolen again. And I felt very invaded by someone on my own property. It was not a tourist. It happened at 11:20 at night. We got a picture. The sheriff came out to see the picture. He took the camera and he said, "This is only the beginning." Now, so that's different ones say different things. And I'm not trying to fan any flames of division because I think we need to mend that. But I think we need to look at some of the facts as we see the measure. It says you may have a business abutting the backyard of a fence, of somebody's fence. It says that in the ordinance. It says smoking, vaping, ingesting, and using creams. It says consumption. It says an applicant must have conditions for consumption. I think you need to vote no on Measure T. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I want to thank very much Jeff, Larry, Billy, and Andrew for all of your participation today. We encourage all of you who've been watching to please follow up with regards to the Measure T representatives that you've seen here today directly if you have additional questions. We also want to thank you so much for joining us this evening for the Yountville Chamber of Commerce November 2020 Election Forum. We hope you enjoyed it, technical issues aside. A recording of this election forum will be posted on the Yountville Chamber of Commerce YouTube channel, in case you didn't have enough. We would like to thank Vincent Piombo of Aperture Media and Design for producing this forum. We would also like to thank Channel 28 for broadcasting us live. For more information about the Yountville Chamber of Commerce, please visit our website at yountvillechamber.com. Remember, the final day to register to vote is October 19th. Visit the California Secretary of State website, sos.ca.gov, to register. And don't forget to vote on Tuesday, November the 3rd, or beforehand. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. We look forward to seeing you around town. Good night.